Okay. Now, how should a high earner view IUL as a supplement to their existing 401k or deferred compensation plan rather than a replacement?
So the index is not meant to replace all those style like the 401k is good, very bucket. IUL doesn't mean to replace them. So that's one thing I'll clear. It doesn't mean to, it means to diversify. Like I said, diversifying your portfolio, the tax buckets. Number one, I earn income earner. I'm also in the oil and gas and I income and all that, but tax-free income is number one. That's what one of the things that will also sway them. Non-correlated assets, a hedge against future tax increase, and the living benefit, like I talked about, you can't compare it to when you have the conventional product that just only has a death benefit.
Welcome to Podcast Wise, Perspectives, Business and Tech. We spend our careers securing corporate infrastructure and optimizing high-level workflows. But are we applying that same level of strategic rigor to our personal balance sheets? In an era of record volatility, buy and hold is no longer a complete strategy for the C-suite. In this episode of Podcast Wise, we're joined by wealth strategist Marquis Who's Who, honored Listy 2025, Walter Egbueze. We're moving beyond traditional 401ks to discuss indexed universal life, viewing it not just as insurance, but as a structural hedge against market downturns and future tax hikes. Today we're breaking down the mechanics of the 0% floor, the power of tax-free capital agility, and how to probate-proof your estate for the next generation. If you're looking to protect your principal while maintaining market-linked upside, this is your roadmap. Let's get started. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, Walter.
Hey, Finn. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nice meeting you once again.
Yes. Nice meeting you too. Now, Walter, tell me, you spend your days helping leaders architect 50-year and 100-year financial plans. But let's look at your own internal ROI. What is one piece of leadership or financial wisdom you've received early in your career that is still a reinvest in yourself every single moment?
So for me, I think being open-minded to absorbing day-to-day communication in terms of the market. So for example, I have a lot of people who are leaders who I engage with, and also people who are also in the industry who are really, really vast in market or in the industry who I really engage with day to day too. So I pretty much put myself available, make myself available pretty much to grab some wealth of knowledge from them and also read books. Day to day, I have like Robert Kiyosaki is one of the who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Of course, Jake Thompson, right?
Okay.
Money, Wealth, this kind of book. Then The Power of Zero. So, but for me, one thing I would say is more of being open-minded to
Okay.
grasping a lot of information from day to day, daily from different professionals
Okay. That's
as
good.
I move on.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. So now most high net worth individuals are familiar with term and whole life. For a C-suite audience, how does indexed universal life, IUL, specifically solve the upside potential versus the downside protection dilemma that traditional products often miss?
So the dilemma, here's a dilemma pretty much every executive faces, right? You want to grow, right? You want to grow, but you can also avoid catastrophic losses in the market, right? So using the index strategies pretty much solves that tension pretty much, like currently what's going on with the trade wars and the geopolitical plays going on. There's a lot of tension that could arise, right? So using giving access to the market linked upside without even exposing you to market linked downside. And that's what the index does. It gives you more access to market upside than downside. Also, we can say when the index rises, right, your cash value participates pretty much. When the index falls, you get the flow of the market, and there are different products out there. So the index is just a generic term, but there are different players and different products, different companies who participate. So, for example, when the market is down, you don't lose. Minimum you get is a 0%, unlike the conventional variable bucket, right, where you have your Roth, your 401k, and all that. You get to lose money. I know over time you say the market will bounce back, but looking at the maths, for example, someone who has $100,000 in the variable bucket and compared to someone who has 100,000 in index, when the market crashes, what happens? Let's say the market goes down by 30%. That's the person has 70,000 now, right? And someone who has a variable has lost $30,000. That's 70,000 compared to someone who has index who will still be getting at least 0%. And some products also has 0.75. So if I were you, Teen, where will you put your money in, right? You want to be really smart to diversify, not just to have everything, but to have protect market losses. And also, like, so in order to avoid the tension, like your question you're asking, like a C-suite executive, that's a good smart play to have a variable diversified portfolio to have an index. Also, that means your worst case scenario, I haven't analyzed what I said, is a flat year, a negative one. You're sure, guaranteed, you're not going to get negative one. And also, traditional products like the conventional buckets, which everybody has, either give you growth with risk because you're gambling, you don't know when the market is going to go down, like you said, and that's when tension arises, and you're not sure of the safety net because you're either checking every day, every minute your phone. Unlike the IUL, which is the index, is one of the few tools out there that has a mix of both. So you're guaranteed negative, positive market growth, unlike the variable bucket where you're not sure on what's currently going on. So it's come off a lot of factors we can control, right?
Right. So basically, what you're saying is that the index one is a little bit more secure, more safe way to do it versus the variable one is like you're literally just gambling the money at the table in the casino.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. You can control the factors. Unlike the index, you can control what you distribute in the S&P 500, the S&P Basic, and the global. And now most of the index have the uncapped, balance of capped. So the market perform very high, you get your return. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk about cash value growth tied to indices, like the S&P 500, how do the caps and floors act as a volatility shield for an executive portfolio? So explain this to me as though I am in 5th grade.
So, for example, so the caps, like that's the maximum, right? You can exceed this. Then the floor for different, like floor as the shock absorber. So look at this floor as, hey, I could go down. I could just be at the borderline, at the bottom. But unlike, like I said in my previous analogy, in the previous question regarding the when you say the dilemma and also the tension arising when you have those variable buckets. Compared to that, think of caps and the floors as your shock absorbers, right? So on a luxury vehicle. So just imagine you have a Mercedes or a Chrysler or which other luxury vehicle, like maybe Lexus, maybe mini luxury, right? Pretty much. The floor protects you from all those potholes, like I explained. Where index, you're sure, regardless of what happens, tension arises. So if you have the floor of 0 compared to when the market goes and you have a floor of minus 30, minus 20, minus 15, you want to be where it is, at least you're in a shock absorber where you're not going below the benchmark point. So you want to be where it is still neutral, right? Where that's 0. So for executives who already have volatility, like variable bucket volatility in their equity compensation, right? Like stock options, deferred compensation plans, and compared to the index, the IUL, it's a stabilizer. It stabilizes you. So for, like I gave an analogy in the last question where a scenario where you have $100,000 in 2 different buckets in the market, and you have one in the index, and there's a geopolitical play or something happens and the market drops by 10% or 30%. You who have something in the index strategy, you're going to get, at least you're going to be in the borderline 0. You're not going to lose your money. So number 1 rule, make money, never lose money. That's number 1 rule of rich people. Yeah, exactly. So your money is still safe regardless of your capital, compared to the other bucket where, like it's called, gambling. The previous one, you'll be thinking, you're not sure. You're waking up because every day you're waking up, okay, let me check the market. You don't want to be apprehensive every morning or something. When you have it in the index, you're sure you're not sure to be checking every day. You just have a yearly review. Regardless, guarantee you're going to get your profits. Your money is going to compound, of course, and it has a compound interest, unlike the other bucket, which sometimes you don't get that. So those are the 2 things. And it grows, pretty much it grows when the market grows, but it never punishes you when the market tanks. So that's one thing to take away. So your money is going to grow as the market grows, but you're not going to get a ding when the market tank compared to the other buckets, which almost everybody has the 401k retiree. But people who are really good with the markets, who check on it day to day, who have time. Imagine you have a 9-to-5 job. Will you be going to the market every day to check it?
No.
You don't have the time. You have kids, family. So you want to have a portfolio where you go to bed and you're thinking about your kids more, not being apprehensive every morning, and you becomes your day to day. It's kind of really shocking that it
Stressful.
affects you.
Yeah,
Stressful.
it's so
You're
stressful.
apprehensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So for leaders focused on capital agility, how do policy loans and withdrawals provide a tax advantage stream of income that doesn't trigger the same threshold as Social Security or Medicare?
That's a nice question. So I'll just give so executives pretty much care about agility, right? Most executives, and the ability to access capital, right, without triggering tax events is really key for most executives. A policy loans, like you said, from an IUL, they're not treated like an income, right?
Okay.
They don't really increase your AGI. They don't push you into
what is AGI? What does that mean?
like the annual gross index,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay.
If I'm right, I don't know if it's a different acronym, but they don't really push your higher, pretty much AGI, pretty much, just like they don't push you into higher Medicare brackets. That's what I was trying to talk about. So they don't cost like Social Security, taxation. You are essentially borrowing against your own growing assets. That's what it means. So tax advantages while the underlying cash value continues to compound. So like I said earlier, like compound interest is very key with the index. It allows you to compound and you have tax advantages, which is one of the cleanest ways to create a flexible, pretty much tax efficient income stream in retirement.
Okay. Now, in an era of economic uncertainty, how does the IUL structure ensure that an estate remains intact, even if the market face plants the year an executive decides to retire?
Come again. Question again.
So, in an era of uncertainty, how does the IUL structure ensure that the estate remains intact, even if the market face plants the year the executive decides to retire? So let's say that this year, I'm the CEO of big tech company, right? And I'm like, I have IUL and all those things, and then I decide to retire. How does that affect my my withdrawal? Like, I want to take money out. Like, how does that affect the structure of it?
Okay, so let's say you said to retire, you're the CEO of that company, like you said, and imagine you retire this year and the market drops by 25%.
Yeah.
And you have a variable bucket. Then you are thinking you lost 25%. So if your retirement income, that's bad, right?
That's a lot
so
of money.
Let's use 5%. Let's use 5%. So let's say and the market drops at the month you're retiring, and that's let's say December 20 before Christmas. You say, okay, I'm done. I'm trying. So if your retirement income at that point depends on the market assets, you're forced to sell it low. That's what it is. Simple.
Okay.
Unlike you had an index for 20 years that's compounded, that's grown, you're not going to lose whatever let's say it has accrued to about $700,000. You're going to get, when the market goes down, the money is still going to be $700,000.
Okay.
At the midnight before it crashed. It's still going to be what it is the following day of the crash. So compared to when you have, if you do 30% of let's say 1 million, that's you've lost 300,000 of your sweat, or 25%, like I said.
So that's 5% is still a lot of money. I mean,
5% is still a lot of money.
So out of $1 million is still a lot of money.
It's 25. So that's 250,000. So your cash value doesn't drop with the index.
Okay.
It simply earns zero for that year, right? So, like, if the market crashes, you're just going to be that 700. You're still going to be there, whatever your money was. So you're not like losing money. You never lose money.
Okay.
And your debt benefit, of course, there's a debt benefit with the index products is still intact, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at stability, right? That's a good, stable bucket to be in compared to, like you said in the first question, it's three ties to this one. Like, you want to retire, you want to be careful, you want to know what's going on before you say I'm retiring and getting your 401k and all that. And remember, you don't even know your tax bracket then, because you're going to set it off. You don't even know your tax. Uncle Sam is waiting. So they're still going to take theirs out.
Yeah.
So you might not end up even getting that 700,000.
Oh, yeah. That's taxes.
Yes. Yeah.
So speaking of death benefits, so beyond the death benefits, what is the strategic advantage of using IUL to transfer wealth to the next generation without friction of heavy income taxation?
So for that benefit of the index, the IUL passes to income tax free. There's no issue apart from death benefits. For example, let's say someone had a client passes away, or someone passes away and left. At that point, maybe the money that has grown in that index bucket has compounded over time for close to $1 million, and the death benefits, of course, in an index also grows. So you have it from the cash value. So let's say the death benefits initially for that product was about 600,000, but now it has accrued, because as the money compounds, the death benefit accrues, there are different ways, which is graded death benefit in an index, right? It's called graded. So it grows, and cash accumulation. The person leaves the world at 1 million. The family is whoever the beneficiary is on that product, will surely call the company of course, you have to submit the necessary document to get that to the family. So they get all that. So it allows families to avoid probate. You're not going to be delaying with probate. It doesn't delay probate, unlike the conventional product, like the Roth IRA. She had left Roth IRA 401k, other variable buckets. They're going to wait first to pay off things like loans, car loans, probates. Unlike that, IUL bypasses probate. So that's another big advantage.
Okay.
You don't have to deal. Family doesn't have to wait for probate for 2 years. Some families wait 1-2 years. You know how the court system is to recover whatever the loved one left. So that's a very big advantage. So it's tax free. That wealth is tax free. And also the death benefits can cover taxes, debts, and final expenses. So allowing the family to keep assets. So whatever it's in that thing, even if they had a trust that is embedded, like maybe the trust is the beneficiary. Because most families, when they set up an index, they put a trust for the family, which is a smart thing. And because the kids or wherever the loved ones are under the trust, so the trust is the beneficiary, so that like an estate, pretty much. So it helps protect the family going forward, which is a smart thing to do.
Now, many executives have wealth tied into liquid assets, real estate, private equity. How can an IUL be used to cover estate taxes and final expenses so heirs aren't forced into the fire sale of a family asset?
So, like I said, if they have liquid asset like real estate, private equity, right, businesses, interest. So when estate taxes come due, pretty much, heirs often have to sell assets quickly, right? But with the from the previous discussion we had before this other question, it's good to have like a trust or a will, pretty much make that the beneficiary, thereby protecting every other asset under it. So it avoids that, because again, the IUL avoids probate. So nothing like legal, unlike when every other thing is bare without having like an index strategy and having that product, then you're going to face all that. And to answer your question, the death benefit covers everything like taxes, debt, final expenses. So the families pretty much are more, instead of liquidating under pressure, because now if you don't have something that bypasses probate, right, and protect all those, like you said, estates, their companies, their businesses, then they're going to be pretty much in a frenzy and start making decisions at the last minute. Meanwhile, you should have done this at the beginning. Of course, the loved ones will also have access to it, but it takes longer time with not having an index or something that bypasses probate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so for VPs and directors looking at a long-term legacy, what are the mechanics of structuring IUL policies for children or even grandchildren to maximize decades of compounding growth?
I think I said it in the previous question. So
Okay.
let's say you have a child as early as 15 days old with an index IUL. I always advise families, you can get the products while you're working on your will or your trust, or get a trust. Make that trust the beneficiary.
Okay.
Because on the trust, you already have your kids and all that. So when you can get the products while you're getting that, but and within that one, you're you can change your beneficiary of the index IUL to be trust so that it protects the family, so that in case the spouse passes away, the owner passes away, the kids can have act as equity. You don't want to just put beneficiaries like that, 1, 2, 3. You want to have everything 100% going to the trust fund or whatever you do for the because trust also is one of the things that bypasses probate too, which is good. So when you have a trust, there won't be any issues. So you avoid that. So that's a way
So it's
companies,
a like a good tunnel to have, basically, is what you're
yes,
saying.
it's a good tunnel. Yeah, it's good to have a trust as a beneficiary of whatever you're structuring with the IUL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, from a CFO perspective, what is the cost of delay when starting a IUL in your 40s versus in your 30s?
So cost of delay, there are different things. To get the index product, because of how good it is, the benefits, in fact, it has 11 benefits, but because of the time constraint, I won't be able to break it down.
Mm-hmm.
It's number one, when you're in your 40s, it's higher premiums,
Okay.
right? You won't be able to get that maximum coverage. Sometimes I've seen clients who have health issues at that point, because then you have a lot of health issues because most times application for it is free, but they want it's most like you're giving the company a liability. You want to make sure you're healthy. So the older you go, more expensive compared to someone who's in their 30s who might get the same. For example, if two persons trying to get a $1 million product pretty much at 40, the person might be paying depending on their health and depending on the risk class, they rank the risk class, they could be paying like $600 a month, or
Oof.
in a year, they'll be paying $10,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike someone who's in their 30s, it could be half of it because they're healthy. Maybe someone who's 31 could be paying maybe 300 or 400. So it's always cheaper. So, and from a financial point of view, right, officer perspective, waiting is expensive. So the waiting game is a losing game, like I said. The best time to get it is now as you're young. The younger you are, starting an IUL in the 40s instead of 30s. So one, higher costs of insurance.
Mm-hmm.
2, fewer years to compound because so then it's now it's the onus is on the financial officer to really structure it in a way. What does the client? So what we used to do an FNA, financial need analysis. So whenever I'm talking to someone, first look at what they can afford. What are their goals for the next retirement? Are they trying to plan for retirement? Are they looking at short term? Are they trying to buy a property? Sometimes you can borrow and a loan on it and tax free get a property. So it depends on what the FN is. We assess that and we look at what they can do. We advise the client on what they can do for near term and long
Okay.
term. So, and also lower long-term cash value. So unlike someone with 30, they have enough time. They can still just do something small monthly and compound because they're still young. Unlike 40s, they might say they have 20 years to work. They want to retire at 60, 65. So they want to compound. However, the product has living benefit. Like when you retire, right, it covers you 90% of whatever the face amount is. So for example, if that 40-year-old client retired at 65, where they can do 2 out of 6 daily living activities at 65, the product gives them 90% or 100% of that 1 million to take. So they start taking what they call income for life. So they can designate every month, this is what I want because I can't go to work. I'm 65, I'm retired. So that's what they call chronic coverage or chronic rider.
Okay.
That's part of the living benefits compared to the conventional products where you don't know what's happening to your market, or conventional insurance products where they only give you death benefits. Unlike the index, it's a living benefits. You can't compare because it also has critical. So the younger ones too has an advantage because when you're young, you don't know what a lot of from the CDC data we see cancer, we see stroke. You can't tell. It's a matter of when. So it's good to have that coverage. So that's why it is compared to the regular product, it has living benefits.
Okay.
Yeah, and higher premiums for the same benefits. The opportunity cost isn't just financial, it's structural. Time is the cost, the most valuable assets in an IUL. So those are the two advantages and disadvantages. But again, I think for every client would different. So look at the FNA, financial analysis, and see what structure. So it could work for somebody in 40 and there's no right or wrong.
Okay. Now, how should a high earner view IUL as a supplement to their existing 401k or deferred compensation plan rather than a replacement?
So the index is not meant to replace all those style like the 401k is good, very bucket. IUL doesn't mean to replace them. So that's one thing I will clear. It doesn't mean to, it means to diversify. Like I said, diversifying your portfolio, the tax buckets. Number one, high end income earner. I'm also in the oil and gas, NI income and all that, but tax-free income is number one. That's one of the things that will also sway them. Non-correlated assets, a hedge against future tax increase, and the living benefit, like I talked about. You can't compare it to when you have the conventional product that just only has a death benefit. Living benefit, like I mentioned in the previous question when we're talking about the critical conditions, a lot of things we eat, we ingest a lot of things. We don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. We have, some people say, oh, I have the protection plan at work. That's your employee. What happened when you leave your job? You don't go with that protection. So you need to plan, you need to have a plan B. So compared to that, for higher income, and it's not to replace it, it's to diversify your portfolio.
Now, what does active monitoring look like for an IUL? If an executive's cash flow changes, how does the flexibility of the premium payments protect the policy from lapsing?
So, for example, if someone loses their job and they can't continue paying the premium, they've built in cash for, let's say, for 1 year. They have cash. So what they do, they take from that premium, and there's what they call, I won't say free look period. They give them they call the provider and say, hey, I won't be able to pay in the next 5 months. So they go into your cash value, and from there it sustains that product for the next 5 months. So we always work with them. And every 6 months, we always look at cash value performance for them. So like I said, Ellen, I think the question, the seventh, when we're talking about will some people be able to afford it or not? From the FNA, you'll be able to analyze, okay, this is what you can afford every year, what you can afford based on what your yearly income is. So the financial analysis also is always good. So from there, you can also do that. But however, things could happen. You could lose your job. Like in this instance, what if changes? If they change a job, maybe the business is not moving well and they want to reduce the payment, right? So they go from the cash value, and that can supplement that till they get a new job. So that's number one. Then cost of insurance could change too, index crediting, then the loan strategy. So they won't be able to take out loan because they are paying out from their cash value like that. Or it depends on how much the cash value they have. Because they have up to 300,000 cash value. Why not? They can take out loan because if they're still job hunting and trying to stop paying, then that covers it. Then there's premium flexibility, right? If, let's say, they always pay annually, for example, person, oh, I don't want to pay annual. Yeah, you can pay monthly. And if you don't want to pay monthly, it's what they call the minimum no lapse, the minimum, just to keep it active. So there are 3 cadres of funding it where we work with clients.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Didn't know that. So now, outside of the spreadsheet and the tax code, when you sit down with family, what is that one non-financial piece of advice you give them about defining their family missions for the next 100 years?
So normally our mission is no family left behind. So we look at we don't want a family to do we always try to say, we're trying to reduce GoFundMe. You've noticed a lot of GoFundMe. What would you want to leave for your kids, right? We see a lot of, you saw what happened to Bossman Chadwick, and you saw what happens to a lot of families like that. Things, liquidation and all that, with people who GoFundMe, with different people who don't really have that structure for the family. So one thing I always talk about families, what are your goals for your kids when you leave?
Okay.
Would you you don't want your kids to wait to, you want your kids to battle with the courts? They say, no, I don't want my kids to have that. Those are the questions I ask, right? And when I'm talking to some like couples or family, I'm trying to say, okay, are you trying to allow your kids to go to school debt free? Because that's what that product does. So it has a scholarship bucket, right? The 7702 bucket compared to the 529. I know 529 is conventional. However, there are pros and cons, but there are more pros with the index strategy for kids' education versus the pros with the 529, because you are flexible with the 702. Let's say you have your child is super smart and get a full ride scholarship to a school. You can use that fund you've created because you are the owner. You until they turn 18 or 19 when you want to pass on. You can use that fund to
pay for
purchase
college.
Yes. And you can also use the money for something else. Unlike the 529 is only strictly for college. So you can't use that fund unless you convert it to a Roth. So, so there's a lot of ifs and buts. And with the 529, I think sometimes if you're telling the government you're very rich, because it's okay, it limits the scholarship opportunity, like percentage. If they're meant to get 100, they might give them 60 or 70. Unlike the 7702, because it avoids probate and some other things. So it's a wise, smarter one to have that for kids 2, 3, just start creating that generational wealth. So those are the questions I ask them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like I learned a lot on financial stuff because that's not my expertise. So I thank you. So I thank you so much, Walter, to
Yeah.
coming on. I learned a lot, as I said earlier, and it was a great conversation. And again, thank you, and thank you to the Wise crew for listening. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.